Morning. I'm John. I'll introduce my great panel here in just a minute. Some of you may be wondering, why did they get the pharmaceutical guy to talk about customer expectations? But I think we have discovered recently that patients are people, and largely the expectations that are being set for our customers are the expectations that you're creating in their minds. And it really brings us to a point, and I'm actually conveniently going to our board next week to talk about a new digital strategy for AstraZeneca. So it's one of those things that's very current in my industry, although arguably a little bit behind many of the rest of you. So I'll be taking notes from my panelists here so I can incorporate it into my presentation next Thursday. Jonathan Vo is the Executive Director for Innovation and Partnerships at Visa Europe. He's been with them longer than he looks. So he's been there, but I think it's really about bringing his job, really about bringing the voice of the customer into the Visa digital strategy. So welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Stan Laurent is the Group President and Chief Executive Officer for Photobox. He has been building that Photobox business over the last 10 years. I really love one of the descriptions from Stan, which is technology company busy turning digital memories into physical, cherished, and highly emotional products. So we'll hear a little bit about that from Stan. And then finally, Mike Bainbridge is the Chief Digital Technologist at Rackspace. I think many of us are familiar with Rackspace as well. I think the thing that Mike talks about is helping businesses realize their digital potential and become more successful online. So we're going to have a discussion. We're going to talk a little bit about those changing customer expectations, how we look outside of our industry to meet those, and then how are innovation teams implementing that back within the customer groups. So maybe I could start with Mike, and maybe you could talk a little bit about identifying a digitally leading organization in terms of how they think about customer experience.
Great. Thanks very much, John. We published some research at the start of this year because we really wanted to understand not just what businesses are after, but what customers are after as well. And I think we looked at what makes digitally mature and successful organizations successful. And there are kind of three pillars to take away from that. And the primary one, and it's the one that everyone talks about, so sometimes it seems like a bit of a cliche saying it, but putting the customer first, understanding what the customer wants. And I think that's really what we're going to focus on in this panel. And at Rackspace we have a strong message of customer experience. People think of us as an infrastructure provider, but really we're providing a service to our customers. And it still amazes me when I talk to our customers today, how they don't put their customers first, or actually putting the customer experience and customer journey first. And I think a lot of organizations still have to make that leap to put themselves in the customer's shoes. And really put customer-focused metrics behind the success of digital transformation.
Great. Stan, clearly Photobox over the last 10 years, the industry you're in has changed a lot. I know it's not just Photobox. You also have the other brand, Moonpig, which is clearly maybe more familiar with some of us as Father's Day is coming up.
I hope so.
Yeah, that was my ad for you. But clearly you've been chasing that customer expectation, and how do you bring that into your innovation process and the way you look at about evolving the business?
Yeah, so we've evolved as a business. We used to just do photo prints online, and then evolved into constant iteration around new products, but also new distribution channels, including, of course, mobile, which is now dominant almost as a vehicle to help our customers order from us. The key tenets in our view around innovation have been not to believe that we could guess what the big new disruption was going to be, and to acknowledge that it was going to be really a test and learn process. So we've had really a misery of failures in order to succeed in some areas over time. And that's been the key, really, was to accept that and to encourage it. I'd say there's three major tenets. One was really making sure that we had a culture that was indeed customer facing and engaged with customers across the board in the company. As an example, we actually bring customers in what we call kind of Moonpig Addict evenings. We bring customers in our office. And it sounds simple, but it means that we have a much wider array of employees interacting with customers, challenging customers around some of their ideas, really informally getting to know those customers. It sounds very, very simple, but a lot of people still focus on metrics or numbers or reports from marketing teams to spread, who is my customers, or even profiles hanging in the meeting rooms or on people's desks about customer segments. But that doesn't do the job. It's very, very different if, as a developer or as a logistics person, you have actually experienced customers telling you their stories and telling you how and why they use your service. So that's kind of the foundation almost. The second piece that we've implemented is really making sure that we had cross-functional teams. So the ideas rarely come from one area in the business, and even if they do, the execution of those ideas, particularly when they're still unproven, which they are by definition until they are, having cross-functional teams really empowered to do the work, get it done, try it, prioritize it, it has been very key for us. So as an example, on the cards service for Moonpig, we kind of were wondering what cutoff time for ordering your card for tomorrow's birthday, what impact that might have for our customers. And it was a big project to move it substantially later. At the time, we had a cutoff time of 2 p.m. for that card to be printed in the afternoon and then shipped in the evening and arriving next day. And we realized, okay, well, moving it from 2 to 4 is actually going to be fairly simple. We started with a very simple with that and just looked at the metrics on the back of it, or the team prioritized that project because it was easy to do. They found out that the numbers were lifted, and then we didn't put any marketing behind it, but we just tried it, did it, and saw the numbers pushed up between the 2 and 4 p.m. Time frame, and then did a much bigger project to get to 7 p.m. And that really then allowed us to pour marketing into it. And for those of you who still watch TV, you'll have seen us advertise actually a 7 p.m. cutoff time for your auntie's birthday, which is tomorrow. And so now customers on their mobile coming back from work at 6 p.m. can still order. It's actually too late to go to Royal Mail and put it in the letterbox at that point. We are the only option out there for the card for your auntie. Remember this. Okay. So this is just an example of how cross-functional teams that were empowered to make that happen and to prioritize it did a first step, measured it, which is the third piece, which around kind of data and metrics and test and learn philosophy, effectively measured the improvements coming from this, and then roll it out in a much bigger way, even including millions in marketing spend behind it. So culture, cross-functional teams, test and learn is, in our view, how you innovate in this day and age, or you stay on top of the kind of constantly changing habits of our customers, including changing patterns of how they interact with their phone.
Great. I know that my son tried to send my wife a Mother's Day card. He still lives in the States, and it was going to be like $40. So now I have an outlet for him for next year. Good. So, Jonathan, I think if you could talk a little bit, I think your job title is great because it's innovation and partnerships. I think of that a little bit as structured innovation and unstructured innovation as you're bringing things from outside. Could you talk a little bit about how that's affecting the business at Visa?
Yeah, so fundamentally, I think the mobile phone completely changed people's expectations of how they were going to interact with their providers. And for us, what we've seen as an example is, every time I land overseas, I expect to get a message from my mobile provider telling me I've landed, telling me my rates, things like that. So I think a lot of what we're trying to do is look outside, not to try and innovate or build new technology ourselves, but more to see what is the impact of new technology, what's the impact of geolocation, what's the impact of biometrics, and so on and so forth. And then what you can often do is talk, because it's so much easier to blend these things together with APIs, to look at almost how can I build solutions that answer that problem, and how can we as a network bring trusted partners together to facilitate that. So let me bring that to life for you. I was with a large car rental company the other day who was saying that their key objective or their key pain point for their customer was every time I land at an airport, I have to queue for 45 minutes to pick up my car. Now the main thing is they have to have proof of a driving license to do that. Now the reality is now I could bring technology partners together that you could have done that at home in an app. And actually probably the bigger question is, who do you trust to store your credential? It's probably your bank. So can we bring those partners together in a way that gives customers repeated value? Because what you will also see is that, let's take geolocation. 5 years ago, everyone was like, geolocation, it's risky, sharing data. But generally, if you give customers something that is sufficient reward, they'll take the risk. And so the more that we can create an environment where people feel that the data is safe, but it's being used in a way that can repeatedly benefit them, they will start to trust us and use those services. And so things like your Visa card has added value from things like ID attributes, smoother transaction flows, and working together with players who already have that capability out the gate and really have different business models. It's no longer about building big single stacks. It's more about identifying core capabilities that we can embed in our platform and our network that will have wider usage amongst our ecosystem.
And so is it the understanding of that benefits to the customer because I look at our industry and what we're looking to really aggregate is the genomic data for patients so that the cancer that they have been diagnosed with can be treated with the most effective outcome or met with the most effective diagnostic to get to the treatment. That information to people is very dear, right?
Yeah.
So how do you demonstrate that value?
So I think a lot of getting people over the line the first time is probably the hardest thing. Mm-hmm. So making people feel that it's safe and that it's worth taking the risk. I mean, let's take the example, TfL, when they launched contactless payments, the press was all about card clash, but getting people and encouraging people to try it, and hey, this works really, really well. I use my card, on TfL today. Once you've got people into that habit and they're doing it repeatedly, they'll stop thinking about it. And so I think making people feel comfortable enough to do it and that the benefit is sufficient upside. So biometrics again. Biometrics has taken off hugely in India with storing of biometrics. Why? Because they introduced it as the way to get social security. So that people, because that's the easiest way they can now access their funds, they're happy to share that data. Mm. And so I think there's definitely a risk-reward factor in a lot of these things that needs to be thought through.
Great. Mike, could you talk a little bit about how innovation is being brought into your business and what are the challenges you see as, you talked about that focus on the customer.
Yeah.
Now, when you get to what do you do with that information? How does that land within Rackspace?
Well, Rackspace has gone through a really interesting journey in the last 5 years. So, we were providing infrastructure services to all of our customers, and the managed hosting industry, as we know it, was almost disrupted itself. So, in 2006, Amazon launched the very popular AWS platform. The book retailer decided to start selling servers to our customers, and what we thought was previously a model where you needed to speak to customers, understand their requirements, craft a very detailed and customized solution for them, and then deliver it online. It was kind of taken away by giving a customer an alternative option where they could do it themselves, and that seamless customer experience that I think everyone understands from the Amazon retail was brought into our world. And Rackspace now delivers infrastructure support on top of the Amazon service, because a lot of our customers came to us and said, look, we love the fanatical service that Rackspace provides to customers, but there are more advantages of using different technologies. We want to understand how we can put different workloads into different environments. Actually talking to our customers, understanding what they wanted, allowed us to realise that we had to adapt, we had to make changes in how we interacted with them. I think that's I mentioned at the start, understanding what your customer wants. I think it's really obvious that customers want something that's easier, and they want to save time, and maybe if they can save money as well, then that's an added benefit. But time's the only commodity that you can't buy more of, no matter how much money you've got. At the moment, I think we're a while away from RoboCop style, automated brains in jars. But
They say
time's
10
the only
years. 10 years.
10
about,
years.
yeah.
Is that from your experience? But yeah, time's the only commodity we can't buy. So if you can save a customer time, if you can make it easier for them, and I think the TfL example is a great one, rather than carrying two cards around, just simplifying everything is really what digital innovation is all about. That simplification of the customer experience and the customer journey.
Good. Just kind of throw this open. Are there other, when you look outside of your own industries, guys, what do you see as something to watch, or that's influencing the broader, maybe liquid expectations that your customers have?
So I think that the opening up of ecosystems and some of the implications of that is going to be challenging. So when I look at things like screen scraping technology, and so I was asked to pay or do some research, and there's one organisation that was basically asking for all your password credentials and everything to be able to do repeat transactions on your behalf. So I think that something is probably going to happen at some point, which is going to be some massive data hack or something which is going to undermine people's confidence, and we're going to have to rebuild that. So I think managing...
They say Zuckerberg's Facebook account was hacked over the weekend, so...
Yeah, and things like login with Facebook. So I think that the idea of people will... And actually, I think the problem we've got in Europe is often customers don't care about privacy or security. So we've just done some research of the frequency of people sharing passwords and stuff with friends is incredibly high. So I think that... How do we make all of these things interact in a safe way? I think we'll probably have some stumbles on the way before we get to that end state.
Good. Stan, what?
Well, I think generally what we're seeing is, when we talked about it in to some degree, but simplicity really works. I mean, we've had a brilliant example from Uber in front of us just a few minutes ago. Simplicity is kind of the key driver for customer engagement in some ways, and people love the simplicity and the speed. So it's speed of the digital experience. In our case, the speed goes all the way to the speed of getting your product in your hands and with the right quality. But it's also speed of support, and customer support is now has to be top notch. Customers have an expectation that if you cancel your journey on Uber, in fact, an Uber driver was complaining 2 days ago to me that he had his pay cut because too many of customers had complained about this and that. And when you complain to Uber, they'll credit you back, and the driver doesn't get the commission. And that's an email process. I've tried it once. It's overnight, and it happens. And we do pretty much the same. whenever customers have an issue. So it needs to be real time, it needs to be fast, it has to be no quibble policy really across the board. So effectively an expectation from customers of full engagement with the customer, and certainly that the customer is right. And that's, we're pushing the boundaries all the time around that.
Yeah, I think it's, the seamless customer experience, I'm sure it's a theme we're going to touch on more today, but, people have got used to getting what they want and getting it quickly, and, my background's in e-commerce, and there's clear correlations between, delivering a great customer experience and a high-performing site or mobile experience and actual people's propensity to buy online. So, yeah, I think that performance, that seamless journey, taking away, anything that is a barrier to delivering a great experience is really interesting.
Great. So if we were to talk a little bit about early identification of those game-changing features, you talked a little bit, Stan, around the methodology you have around bringing customers in, but it seemed like that was also sharing what was already in works. Do you guys have an approach that has that? How are you going to keep the leading edge for your organizations?
So certainly for us, I think the first thing is putting far more time up front in understanding the customer journey and getting experience of either where the pain points are. And often those are as much emotional as they are real. And a lot of stuff is a lack of comfort in some of this technology and trying to get them over that barrier. And I think the great thing is now that it's much easier, to your point, to test and to draw something up pretty cheaply that you can put in front of a client or a customer and get reaction to very quickly, and almost changing the philosophy of it's good to change tack. So most large organizations tended to be, you signed off on a business plan and then it became about selling that business plan through the organization. Tolerance of having to take a detour, taking the input that says, do you know what, this baby that we've created, the customer doesn't react that well to it, or they need it to change. And making that part of the process and iterating through. So almost you've got a pretty high level of confidence before you've written the first line of code. It should be the ideal state.
Okay, good. Stan, Mike?
Yeah, I think, understanding what the customer wants, and particularly when you talk about metrics and measuring success is clearly important. And the one that I think comes up most often is Net Promoter Score, and there's some interesting examples of particularly Virgin when they're looking to deliver great customer experiences. Everyone within the organisation is metriced on Net Promoter Score, so how successful and how happy that customer is. I think there's a lot of, particularly with traditional businesses, there's a lot of focus on internal metrics and what success looks like, as opposed to what makes the customer happy. And when we talk about digital and like the example of Uber, we're pretty much all customers. We all use smartphones. Everyone is really a customer. So taking that leap to understand what customers really want is an important thing. It's somewhat difficult in the industry that we're in, but we really try and spend a lot of time to understand what our customers' businesses are. We're in the position where most of our customers are doing something online. That's we're providing those cloud services for customers. So when we talk about digital, we have a lot of customers who are in that exciting startup space and trying to do new innovations. So sharing customer stories as well is really important for us, and being able to share those messages and experiences as almost a community for customers. And that's something we're really promoting at the moment, because we see great interactions and customers get rewarded by sharing those experiences as well.
That's good. Stan, something to add?
No, I mean, I think I talked earlier about test and learn. I think the main point in the end is also to make sure that all those different innovations that happen all the time across the company, in our case, are directing to building something that's meaningful for our customers. So just to take one example at Moonpig again, we're about celebrating great events with a card, but then we thought, well, if we're celebrating events, what else can allow customers to show that they care? And that's how we started, frankly, because the neighbors of the business used to sell flowers, and we tried to put a few bunches of roses on the site, and it worked, and we're now probably the third online retailer for flowers as well in the UK. So I think the point is around innovation, having that kind of direction of travel around the brand and its purpose, and how it ties emotionally with customers seems to be quite important, because the potential of what you can do, and frankly, the discussions, about 82% of my time is probably spent in prioritization discussions, and because there's so much possible in the digital world about what you could be doing. So that's really empowered teams who test and learn, but who know what the direction of kind of emotional travel for the brand is key.
Great. Maybe be a good time to turn questions over to you. I think the direction from before was wait for the microphone so we can all hear you. There's one over here. That innovation guy?
Yeah, that's me again. So, do you want me to reintroduce myself, or anyway? You talked a lot about the importance of the customer, of the consumer of your product. I think hopefully we all take that for granted. When you innovate within a business, an established business, your innovation has two sides. One side is the consumer side. The other side is the side of the business. I expect for Stan, your company is much more digitally native than other companies. But I mean, Visa, for example, when you come up with something innovative, how do you nurture it from innovation through to fruition, and it can survive entering into from the Garden of Eden of your innovation lab to the howling desert of the actual business, all the things you need to change, the people you need to get on board, the changes you need to make to support it going forwards?
It's a really good question, and I think that probably one of our biggest challenges as a large organization is the kind of process that large organizations put around many of these things.
Designed to kill innovation.
They are designed to kill innovation. And so, frankly, I think the lighter touch and the lower risk you can keep it, and often in many cases, I will try and keep it as far away from the organization as I can until it's genuinely proven. Because I have a slide which is kind of a Swiss Army knife with all the bits and bolts attached to it. And my point would be, this is what you get when you ask a large organization for a knife. So everyone will have an opinion, everyone will add features or functions or scope. And so I think that the tighter and the more you can break it down into really simple and deliverable chunks, the better, so that you can prove some wins as quickly as possible. But it's a really good question, and it's probably one of the biggest areas of challenge. And generally, the more I can try and keep it away from the mothership until it's proven, the better.
And I'll just add, because we play this game also, and there's a reason that my innovation team is not at one of the AstraZeneca places, right? It's around the corner from here, because it's a cooler place to go to work, for one thing. But the outcomes allow for that kind of incubation. The other thing I will add to what Jonathan said is that I think the right sponsorship within the business is also a key factor of success. Yeah. So it can be our cool idea, but if you kind of do the ta-da, here it is, it's usually met with, well, that wasn't what I was thinking about, as opposed to walking along with a great sponsor. And I think we've been successful in bringing things into the business with some of the same leaders, because of the way that they think aligns with the process that we're trying to do, and really taking that patient-centric view of the world.
I think at Rackspace as well, we've certainly seen when you start to change business models, when you start to interact and deliver new and innovative or different services, it's also really important, like you said earlier, I think, around having a cross-functional team. So, you know, everyone pulling in the same direction. And, you know, when you've got a business that has rigid processes and you know, I think digital transformation isn't just about customer stories, but it's about, you know, delivering business optimizations around those processes and automation around them as well. So having that cross-functional team to be able to understand the hurdles at all the different parts of the business is important too.
Good. Other questions? Down here in front? Oh. There's one here as well.
Hi, my name is Alicia Alenia. I'm national head of practice at Slater and Gordon Lawyers. So from my perspective, the legal profession has been steady state for a very long time. And although we've got a lot of regulatory changes to navigate, I think the digital revolution is what's going to impact us very significantly. So we have to be innovative. In terms of the coming trends, I've read a lot about blockchain. What do you know about that, and how do you think that's going to impact my area?
So I think let's separate blockchain, which is a distributed ledger, from Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, which a lot of people are put on it. So my personal view is blockchain was fundamentally started to be anonymous, unregulated, and so on and so forth. And I think that trying to use that, you could argue that obviously as Visa, I'm bound to say this, but a lot of the value we bring is bringing consistency and standards and rules and the trust that if I send money to someone overseas and they don't give me the services, I've got some rights. And I think the problem we have is that I don't think regulation and legislation has really known how do I deal with the sort of cross-border stuff that now takes place as a result of things like the internet. I think blockchain will find some use cases, and I think it's probably best to hold off on a formal opinion on it until it has nailed down what those are going to be, because I still think it's technology looking for a problem to fix right now. I think, frankly, things like the PSD2 and open APIs, which are existing and commonly used, so the legacy of things like Amazon Web Services and people starting to do more and more stuff in the cloud with more and more different parties working together in that value chain. I think that's going to be a really interesting question, so that, you know, what happens if there's a failure point at one party? How do you identify that? How do you get protection on this? And I think that it's all very open-ended at the moment, and certainly things like regulators are trying to put that very much at the door of the banks to cover it. But I don't think that's sustainable, because the banks will just, you know, refuse transactions. So I think there's a lot to be done, and I think that generally, you know, the problem is that the catch-up time of legislation and the legal, and I say this as someone who trained as a lawyer, is it's not able to react at the speed at which all this development is taking place. And I think there's a long way to go.
Good. One more. Alistair?
Yes, Alistair Heath from the Telegraph. I was breaching my own rules here. It's not very good. Yes, well, I mean, obviously, and the way you've explained it is all fascinating and almost easy. But there's a lot of very large companies, older companies in particular, that are struggling with some of these issues. And I was just wondering whether, if you had one piece of advice each for kind of longer established businesses that are struggling with these sorts of issues, what would it be? And I mean some tangible advice.
Mine would be, at senior level, sponsor it and, you know, basically get some people in at senior management level who care about this stuff. You know, the problem someone like myself has is often having to explain what an API is and why people should care about it in the first place, while at the other time people have already got it and far ahead. And so I think that, you know, irrespective of most of the large, of who it is, all of these guys will have great data analytics people. They'll have really smart user UX people, and those are common features. And I think that the skill sets and any organisation that's successful has got senior level sponsorship and has got those people on at senior levels in the organisation.
Yeah, I think an important part about digital maturity is empowering and enabling your employees, and particularly with large organisations, you've got a great advantage in that you've got thousands of people potentially who are probably, well, maybe not all passionate, but at least support the company they work for, the brand. So enabling the employees to promote ideas and have the freedom to make change, I think, and to come up with those disrupting ideas. You've got the people who are dealing with customers on a daily basis, for example. There's plenty of opportunity there internally, and I think sometimes in bigger organisations, the lead from above mentality doesn't always listen to the people at the coalface necessarily.
Yeah, I think same thing. It's all about bringing in the talent to challenge status quo and challenge what I've seen in particular with large retailers is there's such a conviction around the power of their model and brand and customer base that it's very, very hard for people who have been kind of led to embrace it, and in many cases have had all their career developing those brands and those services, to actually turn around and think, well, actually there's a completely different model that's coming here, a different way of engaging with customers, different types of services, etc., that are actually rolling over. And so having the people who come in all the way to the top, board level, but also management, exec level, and so on, and which means more diversity in many cases as well, to get those ideas and to challenge the status quo is the starting point. Or else what you tend to see is, a few small initiatives in a corner of a large corporate that, in some cases are successful, in some cases aren't, but certainly not a wholesale change in the organization, which is in many cases what is needed. I mean, certainly if you're in retailer shoes these days, that's probably what you need.
And I just add kind of as maybe a summary for this as well. One of the things I like to talk about is that part of the success in innovation and meeting those customer expectations is humility, and your ability to challenge, as Stan was outlining, your own knowledge base about how you were successful, because that may not be the best way for your business to be successful going forward. And there's a methodology. We've heard a lot about talking to the customers. We didn't talk too much about our employees as customers, but I think one of those steps can be reverse mentorship within your organization as well. Go spend time with the people who just got hired and what they're interested in and how they would think about your business, because that may be how more people are thinking about your business than the successful things steps you took to get to where you are. So I would just say that customer focus is hugely important. Don't miss your internal people as having an experience that can be valuable in your business and moving it forward. With that, if you join me in thanking the panelists from this morning.